Hello and welcome to the Friday wrap-up presented by the Gokhstein News Network. I'm your host, Landy, and today is August 22nd, 2025, and we're going to start out by looking at Bitcoin, but I know that everyone is well aware that Ethereum made a new all-time high today, at least on a swing, and we will be checking on that in just a moment, but I did want to call out that Bitcoin has now reclaimed the bottom side of the range here, so we can see that on a closing basis, Bitcoin did get above that 115.7 and work its way up to a high of 117.416 now. It's not out of the woods yet for Bitcoin, and I do need to see a reclaim and a trend break because this is still a downtrend for Bitcoin. Now, Ethereum does look a little bit different because Ethereum already looked strong, as I mentioned on Wednesday's check-in. So what we need to see from Bitcoin here is a close above the 118,641 high to get a trend break. That would start to look really good because right now it is just in the bottom side of the range. So let's go ahead and turn on support and resistance zones of interest here. You'll note that I do have a zone down below marked out inside of the weekly, and this is going to be this purple zone. This is just some dailies. So the 110.830 to 109.630. Obviously, I'm not looking for that right here, right now, or anything like that. But if I do see any kind of failure to break above and start closing above around the 117.8 to 118 level, and then start to take out this lower high swing at that 118,641, then this would be a bearish retest for this zone. So as it stands right now, it can come back down and even on a bearish retest and try to put in like higher low equal low structure and then try to take out like a high somewhere around here. But for the moment, it's still a downtrend for Bitcoin, but we did see some encouraging price action. Now, Jackson Hole is going to be going on over the weekend, so there is some more talks to be had, but the main discussion was already had, or the main talk by Powell was already had, where he came out dovish. Now, I've mentioned this before, the Fed really doesn't have a lot of incentive to cut right now, but he indicated that essentially they're open to it, but it was still, we're open to either cutting or holding. And, I've maintained, I think, I do think that they stick to their plan, which could lead to end of Q3, beginning of Q4 cuts. But that is going to depend on the data that comes in, especially now the data that comes in the first part of September. We did see flash PMI, manufacturing and services came in strong, and but it came in strong with some inflationary risk there. So, he's kind of towing the line between the two decisions, right? Either cut or hold. And I know that the market's really predicting very heavily that there's going to be a cut. I need to see some more data to kind of, to form my opinion on where I stand on that. I still do think that they at least have a cut of 25 basis points this year. And I do think that it comes I still estimate the timing to be around that end of Q3, beginning of Q4 timeframe. So things are starting to line up. We'll see where he goes with it though. But what I will maintain, like in the data itself, there's really no incentive to cut for them right now. So I do want to exercise caution or at least express that those who are bullish on a cut, just, look at the data and understand kind of how things are shaking out, because it wouldn't be a surprise if he chose to hold as well. And in this case, and I still think if that was the case, Q4 might be the time frame to do it. But we've got bigger things to talk about here. We've got Bitcoin. We know what I want to see out of this price action. And if we do see a trend break, Bitcoin does have the ability to go for more, closing right at, right essentially just above the basis band here is neutral. We're set up in a range here. If Bitcoin does start to close above around 117.8 to 118, eyes on that 118.641 here to the low 119 region. If we see Bitcoin starting to climb into the 120 to 121 green zone up here, I don't think the shorts have too much cover. There's more incentive to kind of let those go and reposition. But above there, you can see the upper second standard deviation is coming in just shy of $122,000. I would want to see closes above there to see an actual effort by the bulls to push up, or start entertaining an effort by the bulls to push up to the all-time high zone up here at 123,000 to that 124,500. Anywhere above there, 125, especially on closes, I would be looking for expansion to the 1414 around 128 to $130,000. So that is a macro fib level on log scale. It's also a fib level from the most recent monthly higher high to higher low. So the 109,360 to 74,420.69 also lines up with a 1414 right at 128 to $130,000. Above there is levels of interest. I'm not a big fan. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of pumps into the weekend, especially when, the market has been shaky throughout the week because of the kind of news expectations and kind of liquidity grabs to both sides and that kind of stuff. So that doesn't mean that the bulls can't make progress over the weekend, but we'll have to see how things kind of shake out. But conditions are pretty clear. And when it comes to the weekly is pretty ugly, but it is ugly in a consolidation manner. And what I would like to see for the bulls, out of the bulls this weekend, and this is going to be what the bears don't want to see, is a close back above the upper first standard deviation here on the weekly. And that's coming in at that right around where the high of the Friday candle came in. So that's essentially the 117.4 level above there. I would want to see closes even further above there, because we will see the basis band rise again on the Sunday closure, and therefore we're going to see the upper first move slightly up. Now we are getting a compression phase on the weekly here, so be aware of where the upper second standard deviation is, and that's around $128,000. The upper third is around 138. Now the monthly higher high is over here and the higher low is over here, and you'll note that the fib extension up there at 138,000 is directly in line with a 1.618. So if we did, for instance, see a run towards the highs and then some closes above 128 to 130, that's the next big level. And you can see that for now, the upper third standard deviation is right there. We are on pretty low volatility within the bullish half of the band, so this is still a very bullish setup. I just want to see confirmation from the bulls here that they're actually going to make a concerted effort on Bitcoin to start pushing this ahead. ETH obviously is kind of taking the lead coming into the end of the week in terms of the asset that's in a better position. Obviously, making a new all-time high is a good thing. And that's what we're going to talk about now. So let's go ahead and head over to Ethereum and take a look at its weekly setup. And you can see the weekly setup is something that I've been talking about for a while. We have pretty expanded bands. Now, Ethereum does have room to run above its all-time high. One of the big things that I want to see for a sector-by-sector alt season, because I don't really think that we're going to see the alt seasons of old where, even the dust in your bag is the know nothing, have no idea why this thing's even pumping anymore kind of stuff. Might see some of that when we see an alt season, but not in the way that we have in the past, in my personal opinion. And what I need to see from Ethereum on the weekly to really kind of kick off a wider alt season, I'll just call it, would be a weekly close with follow through above the prior all-time high. You can see that it was ran. There is a slightly new all-time high for Ethereum here at 48.86 as compared to the 48.67.81 over there. If we do see closes above there, I would be looking for 5K to 5,500 there pretty quickly. It's not far away anyway. And you can see where the upper third is, but we have pretty expanded bands here and we have pretty high volatility within the band set. So, I still, for the daily, I still want to see some consolidation for a really big push. And the next big push above the all-time high, after a bit of consolidation, um, would be to move towards the $6,500 area, this 1.168 up here. That would be the next big area that I'd be looking, somewhere around 6,500. Swings above are fine. Closes above are what would really start to target some deeper areas of interest. But that's where I'd be looking next. And you can see that the upper third is right there at right around the 5,500 level. It will move up, so it's probably going to be closer to $6,000. So, it would be fair to say that above $5,000, 5,500 to 6K is absolutely attainable. And then, of course, from there, 6,500 and possibly above on swings would be the next big area that I'd be looking for. For the daily, nice structure here. And I mentioned this on Wednesday, much more bullish positioning for Ethereum. And I mentioned that it absolutely could run its all-time high. But what I want to see is close over close price momentum above there. The bands are pretty wide set, so be aware of rejections initially in lower term timeframes above the all-time high around the 5K to low 5K number. And you can see between the upper second and upper third that as this updates over the weekend, especially being above the upper first, which is what I want to see for Ethereum here. The upper first is at 4630. And 4630 is, of course, the big weekly zone from the prior cycle all-time high. So I'd want to see that for continued volatility, levels of interest to keep expansion to the upside, being at least one standard deviation away from the basis band, and see it start to break through its all-time high here and tag that upper second, maybe even get above and go for the mid to low 5,500 area. Now, the biggest thing here is be aware that even on new all-time highs, even up to, pretty hot read, which we've seen some hotter reads, but on the daily here, be aware that around the low $6,000 region is that 80 read for RSI here. This is about 6,200 to 6,300. And again, that would look, that means that we could potentially see, moves up towards this, because it's going to update day after day. That read for the 80 level of RSI there, it's going to, as long as Ethereum is in a strong position still, and I would say as long as it's maintaining healthy structure above its last low here, because this is a trend break. It is a small trend break, but it is a trend break because this was a bit of a downtrend. It didn't go for the full trend reversal setup. It was a higher high to lower high, lower low. Would have needed to see another lower high. We didn't see that, so the setup didn't play for the bears here. And in that case, this is a throwback, but it's still a trend break. It's a smaller trend break, but it is still a trend break, and you'd want to see the last lower low. It's actually a higher low. No, so I take that back. It's a swing lower low. So you do want to see this maintain either way. And in that case, that's, just above $4,000 at $4,062 here on spot. And then I think it's pretty clear that Ethereum, even in lower term timeframes, still has the ability to continue to test around the all-time high and maybe even higher. Not the greatest candle in lower term timeframes there, but it's not anything too concerning just yet. You can see that for the 4 hour here, for instance, that number is going to be around 4,200 that the bulls want to see hold up, and then start building up trending structure and kind of go for it. Bands are expanding off of a compression during this downtrend on the 4 hour, but we have hit about 100 BBW P here, which is a volatility metric that's pretty important. But what that means is, as long as it's maintaining structure here, puts in, another higher low and stays somewhere above, the basis in the strong half of the bands, you'll see these bands swoop up and over and start to get into some of those daily targets that I was just talking about, 5K to 5,500 and potentially more. And it's just, weekend. I hate when things are pumping into the weekends because it is a lower liquidity environment, and it can muddy the picture for what's going on before the move really gets rolling. And, so I would say that just pay attention to the levels. Very strong above 46.30, that upper first on the daily. Will soon be somewhere around the upper first in the next couple of 4-hour candles here. And of course, I would still consider it strong above 4,400 and looking really good. And potentially seeing the band swoop over and maybe try for more, maybe over the weekend. That might be viable. Just be aware that if it starts to break back down towards or below 4,400, it could go for that higher low and try to get a trend break to the downside in this case, and that's around the 4,200 level. So again, we're getting a lot of confluences between a higher time frame like a daily and even a lower term time frame like a 4-hour. 12-hour actually looks pretty good, but still set up in a range. We need to see a close above. Guess what? The all-time high to actually initiate some pretty good expansion to the upside. And again, targeting 5K and probably 5,500 thereafter. And then we could maybe look to 6,000 and then eventually 65 and above. I would be very, very cautious of around 6,500 if it does get there. I need to see consolidation for a healthy move to continue. So yeah, I mean, look, this is a nice structure. The opportunity is there for the bulls. It's there for the bulls on Ethereum. It's there for the bulls on Bitcoin as well, to try to recover the range and start to make a concerted effort to push out some of that short interest in the market and have them running for cover at higher prices. But I'd pay attention to Bitcoin, because if Bitcoin rejects the bottom side of the range and we see continuation on Ethereum, it may in fact start to come back down for some consolidation on Ethereum. Let's take a look at Solana. Solana still has some work to do here on the daily. Did get a trend break as well. I like to see that. So it needs to maintain the last higher low, or well, in this case, lower low, because we had a low. Well, this was a swing. This was not a closing low. It was a swing higher low to lower high close with a lower low in place. So it is technically a lower low, but it's really realistically it's a closing higher low. So it does kind of paint a little bit more of a consolidation picture, a ranging picture, and you can see that reflected in the bands here. And I need to see closes above 210, 209, 210 area to really start breaking out and start making a run for deeper targets. So in this case, we need to see this last low hold at 175. Otherwise, it is in danger of falling down to the 165, 160 level. And in this case, closes above the upper second would be expansion into the high side structure at 209. Again, we'd need to see continuation. And I would want to see some concerted efforts to get pushed back up to that 250 and go for a reclaim on Solana. That would look pretty good for Solana as well. And realistically, if you want to see this, what I'm going to term as a sector by sector alt season, if it does start to occur, you want to see Ethereum and Solana and all the other alt majors moving in tandem towards their all-time highs and starting to break through them. It just like when it was just Solana and Ethereum was lagging. Now Ethereum's ahead and Solana's lagging, and some of the others are lagging as well. You want them all to be, you want a concerted effort from all the major alts to start pushing towards a nice alt season that I think will be sector by sector. And I'm going to say that over and over again. And in this case, weekly, let's just go ahead and check. Yeah, the opportunities, the door is open for the bulls, but they need to maintain that 175 on the low and start breaking above 209, 210. Pretty simple stuff. And that's all I got for you. I want to just double check on Bitcoin. Yeah, okay, so this was the other thing. We do have a drive of bullish divergence, but again, this is right into the bottom side of the range. We need to see continuation and a break of the downtrend, as well as a break back into the range above around 118. We do have a potential bullish cross for momentum going on here, coming in on the other side of that. And this is, what was the close here? The close was 112,480 and then 112,512. So we have bullish divergences off of RSI and momentum here. So we just need to see realistically from a structural standpoint, we need to see a downtrend break after that. and then the bulls can start to claw back some control and possibly start, moving towards the top side of that range, 120 to 121. That's where things will get interesting. 116 is the pivot there for the bulls. So 116.8, as long as that's going to start moving back towards this low somewhere around below 116, essentially, in terms of momentum, the longer the Bitcoin can maintain in and around where it is. You want to see 115.7 hold and 114.750 and all that kind of stuff, or else it's playing back between essentially 112 and 114. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Congratulations. And that's for some specific people out there. And it's a funny in joke. So I do want to wish you all a wonderful weekend and a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that being said, Landy out. I'll talk to you again on Monday. Take care.